Time to find out.
Hello, all you beautiful ladies and animals, and welcome to another episode of Can It Stack Up to Warhammer. Now, if you haven't seen the last episode, which is likely because 97% of my viewers aren't subscribed, you should do that, by the way. It would be much appreciated. In the last episode, I threw a handful of sci-fi and fictional factions against the Imperium of mankind. The Viltrumites, the IMC, the Coalition of Ordered Governments, and Kratos. We also ended up doing a one-off with Ben 10 and a more focused view of the IMC against the Tau. But today, I have for you a handful of lightning rounds. Now, instead of throwing each of these against just Space Marines or the Imperium, I'm going to be throwing each of today's factions at whatever 40k faction aligns to them thematically. So Doomguy, Demons, Generator Rex, Mechanicus, so on and so on. We're gonna build up our hero and point out at what they'd be the best at and where they might fail the most or get deadlocked out from. Because for Warhammer, each and every faction numbers into the literal trillions upon trillions, so trying to get an accurate count isn't possible unless we force it to work. I won't be spending so much time fleshing out the 40k side of things, or we'd be here for another 2 hours, so if you're not super familiar with Warhammer, I'm sorry, but I hope there's enough context to pick up on. Otherwise, the video is gonna presume you know enough to fill in the blanks.
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer.
First, let's go over the factions from the last incursion and clean up some of the statements I made about them. At least all of them but the Titanfall verse, because they got an addendum in the Tau fight. The Cog still get stomped. They're on a single planet, and they won't last long. Now, Cyberpunk. I'll be fair, I was really only throwing V at a single Space Marine. If you took the entire Cyberpunk Earth and put their entire armed forces and all the gangs and cool tech, yes, they could be taking down Space Marines, but once more, it's a single planet. That's it. Helldivers. I do think they could exist. Instant FTL would make them the fastest faction in the galaxy, and they don't even have to travel through the warp. But speaking of, with the constant propaganda and nationalism of the divers, I think they would fairly easily fall to chaos, trying to tamper with things that they don't understand and end up dooming themselves in the process. After all of the Helldivers' biggest enemies are ones that they've made themselves. Viltrumites. While most of the Imperium gets stomped, only high-tier Primarchs, the Emperor himself, and Psykers giving them a threat to go against, most of the Xenos, and especially Chaos, would have an easy time with them. As Necrons atomize enemies, the Tau use sun guns. The Tyranids would simply just begin to evolve using Viltrumite DNA, which is supposedly super strong to begin with, giving us literal superbugs. And of course, Chaos is magic, something the Viltrumites don't have any natural defenses for. And finally, Kratos. I still think he solos. At least post-Valhalla. Kratos is too smart and wise to fall for Chaos, and nothing short of the Emperor even has the ability to kill him for good. And yes, traveling from planet to planet would be an issue for him, but traveling through hell to get to his destination does not sound too out of the question for the Ghost of Sparta. Now with that out of the way, let's get on with our new contenders. The greatest question to take into account here is what is the difference between Doomguy and the Doomslayer? To put it simply, the Doomguy and the Slayer are the same person. Just one of them is post-demigod surgery, call that a DGL, but the Doomguy, while very intense and souped up on demon hatred, is mostly just a dude. A guy, let's say. At best, he'd get corrupted by Khorne in his mindless bloodlust. At worst, he would simply be overwhelmed by the non-stop forces of demons coming from the warp. Now, the Slayer, well, that's a different story. First of all, the Slayer will not fall to chaos. It's in his tagline.
Unbreakable, incorruptible, unyielding. None could stand before the Horde but the Doomslayer.
His devotion to the death of all demons makes him so strong of will that they cannot corrupt him. Strength-wise, well, the Slayer is as strong as whatever he's fighting. We talked about this briefly in the Chainsaws video, but the end of Doom Eternal sees the Slayer going against the creator of his universe, an all-powerful being that manifests itself in the form of Doomguy, and then he still lost.
Tell me, have you nothing to say to your creator before you strike him down? No.
The Slayer is so powerful that he cannot be killed, simply locked away in a place that the demons hope he will never wake up from. So against the many forces of chaos, I don't see them actually killing him or corrupting him. Best they could do is maybe Tzeentch could come up with some wacky plan to trap him once again, but as before, it's only a matter of time until he wakes up, and then... yeah, the Doomslayer fucks hard. Can he ever defeat chaos? Can he kill the chaos gods? Well, that all depends on your interpretation of the lore and his abilities in contrast to the everlasting strengths of the great game. Let me know down below how you think the Doomguy battle would go.
What did you think you were doing out there all this time? You namby-pamby cocksucks are Confederate-sanctioned assassins!
Our next entry into this is Heavy Echo of the Galactic Confederacy from Bulletstorm. Now, if you've never heard of this game, how dare you? This is such a fantastic title developed by People Can Fly and Epic Games just before Gears of War 3 was released. The combat is fun and the story is great. I'm still sad we never got a sequel.
Is it just any old thing you touch crumbles into dog shit?
Your mom survived. Barely.
All of that aside, what exactly is Heavy Echo? Echo is a squadron of super elite soldiers created and controlled by General Serrano of the Confederacy, this universe's galactic empire. Now, as foot soldiers, but also political assassins, we're putting them up against the various agents of the Imperium. Heavy Echo uses a variety of tools, gravity boots created by Dead Echo, the first iteration of the assassins led by Grayson Hunt, the protagonist of the game, along with grav slings, basically an electric whip that allows one to manipulate their environment and throw enemies into the air. They wield weapons that can be supercharged, like the basic rifle capable of vaporizing all of the flesh off of a human target pretty much instantaneously, along with snipers that fire too fast to dodge and ammunition that can be remotely controlled after fired, 4-barreled shotguns, and all of the other basics you'd expect from a series inspired by the architecture and design of Gears of War. Now, if we compare these to the elites of the Astra Militarum, the Tempestus Scions, or Assassins of the Imperium, how do they stack up? In the grand scale of things, obviously the Confederacy and even Heavy Echo are outnumbered. But between the grav boots, slings, and overcharged weaponry, I would happily put them next to Scions in terms of strength. Stronger than a league of regular rank-and-file soldiers, but not nearly to the strength of something akin to a Space Marine. If the Confederacy ended up in the grimdark future, Serrano and his special forces would happily fit right into the Guard, becoming a unique yet simple subsect of shock troopers within the Imperium. In a fight, a full squadron could probably hold off a decent-sized force of the regular Guard and even the Scions in the right circumstance, but a loss for them is only a matter of time.
Piece of tin.
On the face of it, Transformers and Necrons have a lot in common. Living metal that can take almost any shape and alternate their form on a whim. With incredible technology and a society built on machine spirits, this is going to be an interesting matchup. While of course, with all Warhammer factions, most of the Transformers could not handle the Necrons en masse in a fight. Well, Mostly. So let's compare two main things: Optimus Prime to a Necron overlord, and Unicron to the overall power of the Necron dynasties. And for that first one, we're sticking with the Bayverse Optimus, because not only is he the coolest,
Time to find out.
he seems to be the most consistent, as all his various appearances in comics and television range the leader of the Autobots from being a truck with legs to being able to lift 1,000,000 tons. For this, we're putting the Bayverse Prime against a Necron overlord, on the middle rung of Necron kind among the likes of Trazyn the Infinite, per se. First off, does Optimus have any motivation to fight the Necrons, or anyone in Warhammer for that matter? Well, all he wanted was to protect Earth and keep humanity from repeating the same mistakes as what had happened on Cybertron. In 40k, well, okay. I feel a grimdark universe would just give us an authentic Nemesis Prime who wants to bring peace to the galaxy. And we know there's only one way to do that in Warhammer.
You die!
First, we'll start off with weaponry. Optimus often brings the goods, whether it be a slew of different guns and cannons, or brass knuckles, an axe, or a sword. Everything Prime wields in the movies does a fantastic job at ripping Transformers in half. And while we have no specifics for the strength or durability of Cybertronian steel, it is pretty much immune to small arms fire from humanity. So putting one fictional metal at the same level of strength as another, well, that feels fair to me. Optimus being able to rip a Necron overlord in half is an easy enough hurdle to get over. But he'd have to touch them in the first place. The Necrons are made of another fictional metal known as the Necrodermis, which heals and repairs itself. Prime does the same. The biggest difference is that Necrons will be teleported out of harm's way if they are too far damaged. In the case of an overlord like Trazyn, they might just hop from body to body a la Ultron until they come out on top. So, weapons and damage might not be an issue, as Optimus could trade blows with any overlord pretty easily, if not easier with his incredible size. Let's instead look at how we can kill these foes for good. For Optimus, it's fairly simple. You have to destroy his Allspark, or his soul. But for Prime, it becomes even harder, as that spark is protected by the Matrix of Leadership, or Cartoon MacGuffin number 7, something that at least in the movies we don't know if it can even be destroyed. And in the cartoons is something that gives Prime the ability to defeat Unicron, a being that, as we'll get into, devours entire worlds. With Necrons, defeating them comes down to isolation. If allowed, a Necron overlord will hop from body to body eternally, or just be rebuilt within the halls of a tomb world. The only way to kill their digitized souls is to cut them off from the network and stop them from coming back. But I think Optimus might just be able to do this, with some plot armor from the Warhammer universe. See, the main thing that makes Transformers different from Necrons as far as living metal goes is the Allspark. As I just mentioned, it's a soul, which means Transformers, like Prime, exist in the warp. Now, this may not be the case with other iterations of Prime, but with Bayverse Nemesis Prime going ape wild in 40k, as we have already established, Optimus becoming a servant of Khorne or Tzeentch is not out of the question here. Meaning, the battle would come down to a Necron overlord and his endless army of Necrodermis to throw at the front lines, and the demon prince of unholy metal, Chaos Prime. Imbued with the strength of chaos and backed up by an army of demonic servants who will help Optimus bring peace by force. Whether this comes to a stalemate or leans victory to one side or the other, let me know what you think down below. Now, Unicron, the entity of chaos and a god within the Transformers universe. In Warhammer 40k, he's tantamount to other chaos gods, or more accurately, the Emperor of Mankind in terms of power, if not more so. Getting the most important question out of the way, Unicron cannot be killed. He transcends the multiverse, so even if you destroyed him, he would simply reappear in a new canon of the Warhammer realms. For the Necron dynasties, their best bet would be to try and contain and subdue the planet-sized conqueror, to send him into submission, as they did the Chaos Gods with their pylon network. But like the Tyranids or the gods before them, it would require the total and combined might of all the Necron dynasties to take down Unicron, as a single tomb world would simply be devoured by the planet wholesale. But there's also one specific output of Unicron that could dispel ruin for the dynasties of Necron kind: Energon, the fuel source for the Transformers, a type of hyper-energetic plasma that powers the insane bots. See Unicron as the darkness inverse of Primus, who creates Energon, creates a twisted variant known as Dark Energon, which allows him to basically control Transformer zombies. So, if the Necrons are careless or don't realize what they're up against, the plasma-powered skeleton warriors who have inherited the Milky Way for billions of years could be corrupted into becoming tools at Unicron's disposal, beginning a civil war between these dynasties as they battle in a second war in heaven against forces of creation itself.
You know who I am?
Harbinger speaks of you. You resist, but you will fail.
We've talked several times about how unending the Tyranids are. So much, in fact, that when pitting them against the Vex from Destiny, who are multiversal and are victorious in every timeline which does not produce the light, I left up to a kind of symbolic stalemate. So how would the Tyranids, an endless fleet of flesh who invade the Milky Way from the dark reaches of space, deal with the Reapers of Mass Effect? A fleet of primordial machines who invade the Milky Way once every 50,000 years to scrape up the biological matter in civilizations of the galaxy to feed themselves in perpetuity. Now, as opposed to battles with the Hive or Vex, the Reapers don't do battles over single planets or on the ground against infantry. A Reaper doesn't even need to land to begin fighting the endless hordes of the Tyranid fleets. A big worry for the Imperium, as we see in the Warriors of Ultramar, is that even when you take on the Tyranids with a navy, spores may break onto the world below and begin the invasion nevertheless. The Reapers don't care for this. They don't care for planets or life en masse. Their goal is to collect sentient life forms and scrape up their intelligence in the creation of newborn Reapers. To this goal, the Reapers would have no use for Tyranids. In being mostly synthetic metals, the Tyranids have little use for the Reapers. We really have two factions that don't care for one another except for external motivations. The Reapers care about life in the same way the Necrons do, and would fight Tyranids just the same. If the tendril fleets of the Great Devourer were able to kill all life across the galaxy, the Reapers would be unable to harvest new life forms, so their only option would be to fight. Now, with incredible cannons and weaponry that would split the largest carriers of the Imperium in half, stopping the advance of the Tyranids would be child's play for the fleet of the Reapers. As other factions looked on to these strange yet powerful Xenos machines that halted the advance of the Leviathan invasions, the Reapers' greatest threat would be instead their back flank. While Tyranid fleets don't have much in the way to threaten a Reaper in deep space, Imperial fleets, Tau battle stations, and Necron technology could slowly be picking off the Reapers one by one until they were overwhelmed in a galaxy much more adept at taking on cosmic horrors than the Alliance of Mass Effect ever could. Speaking of, the most important fact of the Reapers' invasion is the Mass Effect engines, which allows them to travel into the galaxy for a surprise attack. Their goal is collection, so invasion before anyone even knows what's going on is prime for them. Without any Mass Effect engines or the Citadel in the 40k universe, they'd begin on the back foot. They wouldn't go easily, and would likely become another stagnant faction among the legions of Warhammer, amassing a surprisingly large army of indoctrinated cultists, members of the Mechanicus who see them as deities and more, but they would still be unable to turn the universe upside down. Even worse if some named Astartes gets access to the convenient options afforded to John Mass Effect from the end of the 3rd game. So, we've thrown Ben 10 at Warhammer already. He came out on top, so what about the Man of Action's second superhero? Rex Salazar is a cool character and a great fighter, able to keep up with some of Ben 10's strongest aliens. But he's no Alien X. Is what I thought before I started to look into the depths of Rex's abilities. Yes, my dear viewer, I am telling you it would not be a Man of Action cartoon without a character who gains the ability to rewrite the universe, and this could be its own video. But just on the basics, not only does Rex have the ability to create machines at will and control/hack any machine that he comes into contact with, but is entirely self-sufficient with his machines, going so far as to restart and keep his organs alive should they fail. He is biopunk on steroids. The Mechanicus would love him, the Necrons would despise him, with the ability to touch a single warrior and turn off entire tomb worlds. The Tyranids would be scary if they got a taste of him, and the Imperium en masse would either regale him as some sort of super omnissiah god, or as the Super Xenos in need of extermination. All of this is without mentioning the meta-nanites, 5 of which that when combined give him the multiverse-altering abilities akin to Alien X, minus the talking heads that need to agree for anything to happen. So yeah, never mind, I've made up my mind. Rex is getting his own video going into depth because Jesus, he's a lot.
Sir, the guardsmen.
With respect, my lord! We're Cadians! We can take care of ourselves!
So with that, brings an end to our next little round of various combatants to the world of Warhammer 40k. Not nearly as in-depth as they require, of course, so let me know if any of these factions or others missed you would like to see in another video. Should the Transformers get a dedicated perusing through the far future, let me know down below. With that, we're at the end. Thank you very much for watching. If you've liked this, be sure to subscribe, share, and like the video if you want to support what I do here on YouTube. Also, if you become a member or a patron, you get access to every single video up to a week early with some extra bonuses, like being able to read my scripts and some other behind-the-scenes content. And like always, if you want to support me in helping a good cause, pick up something from my merch collections linked below. Whether it's a shirt, jacket, apron, or a mug, each and every dime from sales are being donated directly to my local food bank. So get yourself an awesome, super soft piece of clothing while doing good at the same time. As always, stay cool, have fun, and be awesome. Buster.